Welcome to the I Love Tattooing podcast, hosted by Jack and Clay, two tattoo artists and shop owners with decades of experience working in street shops where walk-ins are always welcome.
Today we are going to discuss the minimum charge, and I don't want to call it a myth because people do have a minimum charge.
Let's have a minimum charge.
About the minimum charge. So there's, in my opinion, a lot of problems with saying that you have a minimum charge and putting a dollar amount on it. When a customer calls and says, "What is your minimum charge?" and you tell them a price, then they tend to try to get a tattoo for that price. Now, not every time, but a lot of times they'll say, "Oh, well, I want to get this dragon and I want it to be the minimum."
Yeah. The minimum charge is also a price shopping tool.
Sure.
They call around. They might not want a tattoo that would be the minimum, but they call around to find what they think is the best price, because they're going to assume that all your other prices are based off of that minimum.
Exactly.
At many shops it is, but it's not always the case.
Well, there was, I think one of those articles that you shared with me said that there was a shop in some area that had, a low minimum that they quoted to customers, but their prices were actually a lot higher than everybody else.
Yes. And
so they deceived people. I don't, maybe not intentionally, but it was sort of a bait and switch type thing.
Yeah, I believe it was intentional. They had a banner outside that said $20 names.
Uh-huh.
And sure, I mean, you could get something a little tiny for $20, but everything else was crazy. Something that would charge $200 for was $500 from them.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But the customer assumed that they were getting a good deal because the shop had a low minimum.
Right. So, I mean, that is a problem where, customers are being deceived. And there's other problems too, like customers telling people, "Oh, well, their tattoos start at this number price, whatever it is, 80, 100, 150, whatever the minimum charge that they're telling people." And that creates a problem, because then somebody's going to think, "Oh, well, I can get my tattoo for that price." And that might not be the case. And really, if you think about it, the minimum charge is $0. It is. Well, you tattoo your friends for or family or whatever, no charge sometimes. Or maybe it's a tattoo that you really want to do on a good customer, and like you give them a freebie because
Sure.
You're into it and you want to reward them and stuff. But the minimum charge is actually $0, because everybody at some time or another is going to tattoo somebody for nothing. So the first thing we need to do is understand that the minimum is actually $0. And from there, you can go into, the problems with quoting a minimum charge for people. In my experience, sometimes if you tell somebody a price on a tattoo, like for instance, somebody comes in and shows you a picture of something that they want, and they say, "Hey, I want to get this rose." And you go, "Okay, yeah, I can do that. It's going to be this size on your arm there. I'll do it for 120. And they go, "Oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah." And then you're like, "Fuck, man, they probably were going to be willing to spend more than that." So I don't even tell people prices. I just go, "What do you want to spend? What's your budget?" They know what they want to spend.
Yeah.
And the minimum charge it should be for us as tattooers, the maximum we can get out of them for that tattoo. I mean, that should be the minimum charge.
Yeah. I also, I mean, I quote people prices, but I don't tell them, "Oh, the minimum is $100."
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I'm probably not going to tattoo you for $100. I mean, it's probably going to be more than that. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm going to steal one of your quotes. My minimum for a dragon is a lot different than my minimum for a rose.
Of course.
And sure, you're right. The right person at the right design, I might do it a little cheaper than I normally would. You know what I mean? But at the shop, as a group, we actually did sit down and decide what the minimum was going to be based off of what other shops were charging in our area. And
Okay.
and we arrived at a number. And then I was like, okay, look, this is the number that we're not going to do anything less than. You know what I mean? Unless it's a special circumstance. And then explain to them, how quoting a minimum, might not be the best idea. People call around and look for a minimum. It's a price shopping tool, like we said.
Yeah.
And just be like, it depends on what you get. What's the minimum? Well, it depends on what you get. What do you want to get, man? And talking about it that way. I think the minimum sometimes for some people is an excuse or a means to justify the price they're fixing to tell the customer. And that stems from not valuing yourself enough, not valuing your artwork enough. They present it in like, well, the minimum's 100, so I have to charge you that. It's like, no, motherfucker, my time is worth that much. That's what, you should be telling me. Like, it's worth this much, It's like they get out of being like, I'm worth this much. Oh, I have to charge you. You know what I mean?
Or it gives them a way to not take responsibility for it. And they say, hey, look, the shop minimum is this, whatever the number is, $100. So, that's for the most basic tattoo. So I'm doing more than the most basic. I'm going to have to charge you more. They're blaming the shop for, the price problem that they're trying to deal with the customer. And that's, like you said, they need to value themselves and their experience and their time accordingly. So saying that, oh, well, the minimum's this, and this isn't a minimum tattoo, so it's got to be this. That's I think a weak point to start from. You should have a conversation with your customer before the tattoo about the design, about the size of it, about the placement, about the colors, all the different aspects of the design that affect the price. And the customers don't necessarily understand that. They just say, oh, it's a simple tattoo. Of course, everything that they're getting is easy. It's easy for you. It's no big deal. How many times have I heard that? It's like, oh, you can do this, no problem. Like, yeah, I can do it, but that doesn't make it easy. It appears easy to you because you have none of the skills it takes to do this. But from my position, you're saying, oh, I just want to get this leprechaun or whatever. And drawing faces and hands might be like your weak point. So you're just like, man, I'm going to struggle with this a little bit. And, the customer doesn't understand that. They just think, well, you can do anything. That what we do is magic to them, which, to some degree it is, but
yes,
it's a matter of understanding the value that we have in ourselves, the time that we've put in, the experience we've put in, all the things that have led us up to the point we are right now. So that's really where the cost of this, some new tattooer who maybe has been tattooing less than 3 years, maybe is going to struggle a lot more than somebody that's been around for 10 or more years. Everybody's experience level is going to be a factor on their ability, and it should be a factor in the cost of something. I think another thing that's somewhat deceptive is people that say, oh, I charge this much per hour. Well, that may be true if you're working on a large piece that takes multiple sessions and multiple hours to complete, a sleeve, a back piece, or just a large scale tattoo. Another tattooer might actually, with less experience, might actually charge more hourly because they can do 5 or 6 $80 tattoos in an hour if they're doing little bangers, versus some guy that's charging $150 and doing something big, large scale stuff. I mean, people have different preferences. Some artists prefer to do that. Big tattoo designs like that, they're certainly more impressive. But I mean, if I can do 6 or 8 small tattoos while some other guy's doing one big one for $150, and I would much rather do that.
Yeah, I tell people that the hourly rate only applies to large custom stuff.
Right.
Because any price I'm going to quote you for something that I can do in one session and in just an hour or two less, then that's going to be a lot different. It's going to be a lot more than 150 an hour is where I like to stay at.
Yeah.
That's the normal for the market that I'm in.
Right.
But man, think about something that would take you a solid hour is definitely worth more than $150. You know what I mean? Your average $200 tattoo, I can probably do in about 45 minutes.
Right.
And that's the same with most of us. Anybody that's been tattooing a while. I mean, some people are slower, some people are faster. It's no big deal.
Sure.
I mean, I line really fast, and maybe I'm not as fast as other people with like the shading or whatever,
Yeah.
And I definitely agree with what you're saying. The skill level is going to kind of help determine the price. However, everybody in the store should probably be on the same page, price wise. And so that means that, the guy that's only got 2 years under his belt is still going to be, for walk-ins, getting the same price as the guy that's got 20 years under his belt. You know what I mean? Otherwise, the guy that only has 2 years, if he's charging less, everybody's just going to go to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's true to some extent. So first of all, the guy that's been tattooing, less than 3 years, let's say, he's not going to be as efficient or fast as the guy that's been tattooing over 10 years, generally speaking.
Right.
I mean, I know plenty of guys that tattoo over 10 years that are slow as molasses. And I mean, hey, that's fine. Whatever. That's the way they work. That's fine. And there's also young guys that are just pick it up quick, and man, they can bust out some tattoos quickly and do it really well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of factors involved in that. Like a one-shot tattoo that we all agree is, let's say, $150 tattoo. One guy might be able to do it in 20 minutes. Another guy, it might take him an hour. And the tattoo is going to be of equal quality, let's say, or the experience is going to be the same for the customer.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about it in terms like that, the price isn't exactly the same because, if I'm making $150 in 20 minutes versus it takes somebody else an hour, I'm doing better than them because I could do another tattoo then.
Yeah. In preparation for this discussion, I did some research, and I talked to some tattooers, and I did a lot of looking around on the internet about minimums, and one of the things that I was just like, why do we have a minimum? And for the most part, I got the same answer.
Okay.
And it's basically that tattoo shops, I'm going to kind of quote something from Authority Tattoo, which is a website. It's an interesting website. It's a tattoo information website that's ran by somebody that's not a tattooer, but consults with tattooers.
Okay.
Tattoo shops and studios have overhead that they have to pay, supplies, electricity, advertising, all of that. So a basic tattoo, they're going to have to charge a specific amount to recoup those expenses. And that's kind of the general belief out there about minimums.
Okay.
One of the guys that I asked, who's been tattooing quite a while, it wasn't about the shop. It was about him. He's like, well, the minimum is, the minimum amount of money that I need, that if I'm only going to do X number of little tattoos a week, I can still get by. That's what the minimum is. And I hadn't thought of that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, man, you're totally right. You know what I mean? If your minimum's $120 or $100 or whatever, and you know that during the slow season you're only going to do this many little tattoos, you can still get by.
So he used the minimum charge as a way for him to meet whatever his financial goals or requirements were for a specific period of time, a day, a week, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's actually probably a more accurate description of why we have a minimum, because the minimum is to make up for the cost of equipment and bills and everything for the shop. Well, that's not true. Because if you figured out what your annual operating expenses are and then calculated, we do this number of tattoos, and you divided your operating cost by that number of tattoos, that's what you need to get by. And it's probably way higher than what you're charging for your minimum.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I mean, we're not doing shit for $50 anymore. It's just everything is too expensive.
Let me ask you this. When you say we're not doing shit for $50, and you said that the guys in the shop that you work with all came to the consensus that the minimum's going to be whatever the number is that you guys decided, is there an issue if somebody does something for less than the minimum? Like, are you going to be upset with somebody, or the other guy's going to be like, why are you doing that tattoo for so cheap, or whatever? Like, are they still allowed to price them however they want?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, they can. Of course, they can do whatever. However, I just had an issue at one of the stores where a guy was he was doing stuff on the cheap, undercutting his coworkers, and
Okay.
the other guys didn't like it. He was doing it on purpose. He knew what he was doing, and he bragged about it to the customers. Oh, all these guys want to charge $150 an hour, but I'll do that on you for $100. And he was just being a shithead on purpose, to the point where somebody told the customer $600 for something. When the customer came back, this guy told him $200.
Wow.
And
that's a big disparity there.
And the other staff weren't happy, and they gave him a little talking to. And I had to intervene, because I feel it eventually could have gotten ugly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this guy's just on purpose being an asshole. I mean, he wasn't making any more money than anybody. He might have been doing more tattoos,
right?
But
more volume.
His paychecks were less. You know what I mean? And yeah, he had to go. You know what I mean? There were.
So is that what happened? He ended up leaving.
Yeah, he ended up leaving. There were other issues as well. It wasn't just that, but I mean, that was a problem, and it caused issues between him and his coworkers. So yeah, you know, we all have something here and there. I've got customers that have tattooed for years. I'm not charging them $150 an hour. You know,
right.
As you said, we all have stuff that we do on the cheap. Well, maybe not all of us. I can think of one guy that doesn't, and that's cool, because he's consistent with it. Everybody pays full price every single time. Doesn't matter if you're related or not. Cool. I get it. You know?
Yeah. I think that's fine. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But the point I think I was trying to make before is the reality is a lot of times we hook people up, and I think that's cool. I think it's fine. You know, I mean, we love tattooing. We do this on purpose. And, you know, I sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, man, that's super cool. You know, I can do that for $200, and they're just like, oh, well, and you're like, you know what? I'll do it for less, because, you know, it's a cool design. You're cool. You gotten tattooed here before, whatever. For whatever reason, you want to hook somebody up. Or maybe, you know, like I tattooed my brother a whole bunch. He's a school teacher. He doesn't have just tons of disposable income. You know, he's got a wife and kids and a house, but he wants some pretty extensive tattoos. So I was like, yeah, I'll tattoo you, and I tattoo him for free.
Sure.
So, you know, he doesn't get a crappy tattoo because it was free. I mean, I still put the same amount of effort into it. I mean,
yeah, I guess for what I'm saying is, we're not doing stuff for $50. I'm saying your average customer in the average situation, we're not doing stuff super cheap, because we've all got bills to pay.
Right.
But I do that all the time. I'll tell somebody $200 for something, and if they're cool and the design's not going to be a nightmare, I'll be like, okay, look, man, you know, they'll tell you, be like, oh man, I can only afford to spend $180. No problem. I got you.
Yeah.
And that's what we do as sales. And that's part of being a good salesman and
sure.
good customer service. But you also get people that you tell them a price, and they, oh, well, do it for this. It's like, well, no. Why you can't give me a discount? It's like, no. Why would I give you a discount? I don't even know you, and you're kind of shitty, you know?
The answer to the question is, of course I can give you a discount, but I'm not going to. A favorite quote of mine when it comes to them, deals are given, not asked for. If I feel like hooking you up, that's on me, but don't expect me to.
Right. Yeah. I've also had customers be like, you know, you quote them a price they tell you that they're willing to spend something that is significantly less. And you're like, nah, man, I can't do that. Sorry. They're like, what? You don't want to make this money? You're just going to sit here and make no money? Well, who's saying I'm going to make no money? Because while I'm tattooing you for cheap, the next walk-in is going to come in, and I'm not going to get to do that one because I'm spending time tattooing you for cheap. You know what I mean? And getting stuck tattooing somebody for less than you should becomes a vicious cycle, because if they get you once, they're going to come back and they're going to expect that same deal. And they're going to tell every single person that they know and that they're related to, go to this guy because he's doing stuff on the cheap. And then, and I've seen that happen with whole shops. And I know you have too, because you and I went and looked at a shop because the guys there had got stuck in this rut where they were doing stuff way cheaper than they should. The customers, they were letting the customers run the show. The customers were walking all over them, you know? And I mean, a lot of people are, I see it. They're good people. They're, you know, they like helping out the customer. They like making people happy, and they wind up doing tattoos for less just because out of the kindness of their heart. And then they're like, oh man, you know, gas is $4 a gallon. I can't afford to come to work, you know?
Yeah. I think that reminds me though of situations where there is a shop down the street that does cheap tattoos. Like, for instance, you'll get a customer that comes in. It's like, oh, well, the guy down the street said he'd do this tattoo for, you know, $100 less than you. Like, hey, cool, go there and get it. You know, like,
yeah, for sure.
I don't want to waste your time. So we need to acknowledge that there are shops, I think, that do inexpensive tattoos, and maybe they're doing us a favor. They're taking the customers that we don't want, and we don't have to deal with them. And, you know, I mean, there's going to be a little crossover always, but you know, those shops that are doing 2 for 40 names or whatever, I mean, they're taking the customers we don't want. So we shouldn't complain about them. They're filling a void in the market that we don't want to mess with.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's a shop by us that their minimum is $40 less than ours. And they're, for a while they were advertising that they would do anything that fit in a 5x5 square for $60, which is what their minimum is. God bless them. I'm glad they're there, because the people that they're dealing with, I don't want to deal with. And it's fine. You know what I mean? They're not hurting us at all. They're helping us, because it's just shit that we got to deal with. Because you get people that get mad when you tell them a price. They become angry, like they want to argue with you about it. I had a dude want to fight me one time over a price. I told him a price. He said something stupid low, like half, maybe even worse. I don't remember what he said, but so then I was like, I think I don't know. I told him $100, and he was like, well, how about 40? And I was like, how about 110? And he goes, how about I just beat the fuck out of you right here? And I said, okay, hold on one second. And I walked off. We had a baseball bat in the shop, and I grabbed the bat and I walked over and I said, okay, I accept your terms. And he left without getting touched.
Yeah.
God, the 90s were great.
They were, and they weren't.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. I mean, we don't have to deal with fights in the shop anymore, and that was a thing. You were always kind of keeping an eye on the lobby. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
You never wanted a tattoo with your back to the door. So, but yeah, the customers can be dickheads about pricing, and I mean, tattooers can be the same way. There's a
for sure.
There's a guy that owns a supply company. I think it's Waverly, but one of their quotes was, the only thing worse than a cheapskate customer is a cheapskate tattooer.
Oh, that's a good one. I've never heard that before.
And yeah, because people were always trying to hit him up about, hey, you know, you should sponsor me, give me free shit, and I'll rep you at shows. And and they have stickers and stuff that say we sponsor everybody.
I like that.
Yeah. Because, you know, there are other companies that do sponsorships, and I totally get why they're sponsoring that artist. You know, I've worked with guys that are sponsored by Eternal or whatever, and their tattoos are amazing, and they hang an Eternal banner up at their booth at conventions and stuff like that. And, you know, the young tattooers are looking at that. They're like, oh man, my tattoos are going to look like that if I use Eternal, you know?
Of course. Yeah.
It makes sense. But, you know, people are just trying to be cheap. There's always going to be cheap people, always. You know what I mean?
Of course.
There's a Sailor Jerry. There's a quote. I can't remember it exactly, but it's like, who's quoting the fucking prices here, hooligan? I'll tell you how much it's going to be. You know?
Right. Well, I that's something I've run into with customers that maybe aren't as experienced or knowledgeable about tattoo etiquette. Let's say they make demands or have these expectations that are unrealistic. And, you know, similar to what you just said about who's quoting the prices here. I've had to tell people on more than one occasion, hey, I'm in charge here. I'm telling you how this is going to go. You have to, you know, I mean, not to be like a cocksucker to them, but you have to kind of put them in their place. Like, I'm the professional tattooer. I'm going to tell you how this is going to go. I'm going to give you what you want and treat you good. But at the same time, you know, you need to respect me and what I'm doing here.
Yeah. You know, they're not trying to haggle with the dude at the gas station. They're not walking into the supermarket haggling over the price of a frozen pizza, you know?
Yeah. They're not haggling with the cashier at Walmart either.
No, I honestly, I wonder if, like, because they know we're quoting our own prices, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, and I see customers try and price shop within the same shop. They'll come up to me and ask a price, and then they'll walk up to an artist that wasn't paying attention and ask him a price. And if you're working with solid people, they're going to be like, yeah, it's whatever he told you. Or tell them something more for playing that game.
There's also instances where the one person doesn't know that you just quoted the price, and then the customer says, well, he just told me, you know, 120.
Yes.
And, you know, the correct response is, well, have him do it. Or, you know, well, why'd you ask me if he told you that? I mean, there's,
yeah,
you know,
I say that a lot. Like, oh, what you already asked him? Why are you asking me? You know?
Exactly.
Yeah. I like I was in here yesterday and the guy told me it was this much. Well, you should have got it yesterday.
Yeah.
To me, it's this much. I wonder if they do that to the person that cuts their hair.
I don't know.
The haircut doesn't exactly, you know, I get why they're not haggling with the guy at Walmart because everything's got a price tag on it. And they know the dude at the cash register ain't setting the price. But
right.
I mean, is your barber setting his price? Are they haggling with that dude? You know, like, and then to me, I'm not going to fuck with my barber about the price because I don't want him making me look like more of an asshole than I am. You know what I mean? Some stupid haircut.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think that for a majority of the customers that we deal with are pleasant, accept the price that we tell them, and there's not a problem.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But quoting prices is difficult. Yes. Every circumstance is different. Every tattoo is different. Every person is different. Size, placement, all these factors that affect it. And even after doing it for 15 or 20 years, you second guess yourself sometimes. Like, did I quote that enough? Whatever. So it's a complex thing that we're dealing with here. Yeah. And I think for the most part, most people are okay with the prices that we give them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But we don't know that until we get to the point where we tell them a price and they go, okay, cool. Or, oh, I can only afford this much or whatever, like whatever happens when you give them that price. And I think the frustration of dealing with a customer who's haggling with you or even disrespecting you, you know, because I don't think everybody that's trying to get the best price possible is being disrespectful. They might not know what it takes to quote a price or do a tattoo or all these other factors. I mean, we are the experts. We have to have the responsibility in that regard. But everybody wants to feel like they got their money's worth, you know, especially nowadays. I mean, inflation's
Sure.
ridiculous and all these other things. So, you know, when people spend money, they want a good value for it. And tattoos are subjective, you know.
Yes.
It's not like they're traded on the stock market and you know what the price is. So I think that the frustration that we have with dealing with difficult customers kind of puts it in our mind sometimes that everybody's a difficult customer, because it only takes one to ruin your day, man. Like that one difficult customer can just set the tone for the whole shop. And, you know, we're on guard against that. So, you know, we try to protect ourselves however we can, like psychologically from it, and assume that it's going to be this battle with the customer over the price. And a lot of times it's not. You know, I've found that just trying to get the customer involved in the pricing aspect of the tattoo is an easy way to solve that. So if you're talking to somebody and they say, yeah, I want to get heart with a name, and that could be $100, that could be $300. Like that's a open-ended thing, you know? So then you narrow it down, the size, placement, all this, the details of the design, everything. And then ask the customer, well, how much are you looking to spend? Because they know what they can afford. They know what they want to spend on their tattoo, generally speaking.
Yeah, they a lot of them have, especially the ones that have been tattooed a few times before, they've got a price in mind. They already know,
sure.
You know, and that's cool. And asking them, you know, what are you looking to spend? Sometimes they won't tell you because they think you're just gonna, you know, rip them off.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I always tell people, you know, yeah, I got you. And if they do come back with I was hoping it would be less, a lot of times I can change the design or something like that to make it less, to fit within their budget.
Sure.
And
yeah, make a design that fits their budget. That's what I try to do.
Yeah. And man, you usually will get repeat business like that because they're like, oh man, this dude worked with me. They've probably been to another shop in town where somebody was an asshole to them. And
sure.
And you know, you're working with them, you're being nice, and that's going to make them come back. I learned something awesome from one of the female tattooers that I work with. The girl came in and was kind of giving her the business about a price, and I don't think it was that crazy. It was like a name or something. And the female tattooer goes, "I know you spent $100 on that mani-pedi," and the girl went, "Uh-huh." And the tattooer was like, well, you do that every 2 weeks. The chick got the tattoo and didn't bitch about the price anymore. Because honestly, I didn't think somebody had told her that tattoos were supposed to be cheap or whatever. And once we put it into perspective for the customer, they were like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And it was not a problem.
Well, I think when you mentioned that somebody had told her that the tattoos should be cheaper or whatever, it could be somebody that's not even trying to deceive her, right? So maybe this girl asked her uncle, who got tattooed in the early 90s.
Sure.
And she goes, hey, Uncle Pete, how much was that tattoo you got? I really like it. You know, I was thinking about getting one. And he's like, oh man, I paid $100 for this. And by today's prices, maybe it's a $250 tattoo. I don't know. So maybe, you know, it's just a matter of bad information that the person had.
Yeah.
You know, we can't hold everybody, you know, accountable and say, hey, look, you need to know what's going on here, because there's a lot of bad information out there. Or maybe like, you know, you and I are tattooing in Florida and there's tons and tons of tourists or even transplants, right? Some guy just moved here from Ohio or Michigan, and like maybe tattoos cost different there. Maybe they're cheaper. I don't know. And they come here and they're like, holy shit, it costs that much? Like, yeah, dude, that's what it costs.
I get that a lot. People go, oh, well, back home it's this much.
Yeah,
well, sure. Back home, the cost of living is a lot less. You could buy a house for $150,000 and stuff like. Right. You know what I mean? It's expensive here. You know, everything is expensive here. we've all got to live. We've all got bills we've got to pay. And I understand you've got bills too, and you can't afford to spend this on your tattoo. I understand that, but it is regional. It is different. And I recently read a thing that said Florida is now the most expensive state in the United States. Like, we have passed California,
Really?
New York. I find that so hard to believe. I don't know what factors they were using to determine that, because taxes in California are stupid and we don't have a state income tax here.
Yeah.
And maybe they excluded taxes, but yeah, Florida is definitely expensive. So if you come here on vacation and you want to get tattooed, I'm sorry, but it's going to cost you more than it does back home in Iowa,
Right.
And that's just the way it goes. You were talking about somebody getting tattooed in the 80s and it being less. So I have some flash, and they are copies of sheets of flash that were hanging on the wall in a shop during World War II. So there's like pinup girls for like $12, $13, $14, right? It's like, mostly pinups and some other stuff, but yeah, they're all around $14, $12, right? So I was friends with a guy that served in World War II, and he was in the Navy, and his paycheck was $11 a month. So that tattoo was actually more than a month's worth of pay. So tattoos actually were a lot more expensive than they are now at one time. Now, these guys are coming off the boat after being at sea for 3 months. So, their wallets are fat. A loaf of bread was a nickel and everything like that. But tattoos were stupid expensive at one point.
Yeah. Well, relatively speaking, yes, of course.
So, and another thing is with all this minimum talk and everything like that, the first shop I worked at after my apprenticeship, the minimum was $45, and that was a little high. And I remember when we raised it to $50, and I had a $50 minimum for probably 10 years after that. I moved to a different part of the country, and the minimum was still like, I think, $50. When I moved to Florida in 2004, the minimum, I think, was still $50. It might have been 60. I don't know if you remember.
I don't remember specifically. I remember when I first started tattooing, the minimum was 40.
Yeah.
It's just gone up from there, obviously.
Right. But so we're at 100 now. I honestly, like, tattoos have not increased in price in relation to the cost of living.
No, not relative to that. No, for sure.
Not at all.
I think that's a factor of there being a lot more tattooers now. So the competition in tattooing is greater than it was, 25, 30 years ago.
That's definitely true.
So that has kept the cost down, relatively speaking. And I think tattooing now has also, the industry itself has evolved a lot to where, now you have walk-in shops, you have custom shops, you have these private studios. So there's different options for people too. That probably has something to do with the way tattoos are priced as well. But yeah, I mean, that's probably a competition, different conversation altogether.
Yeah, competition is always going to drive the prices down, and that's why competition is good
for consumers.
For sure. It's good for us too, because we've got to try harder. You know what I mean?
Right,
you've got to treat the customer better. I think we talked about that last time. Like, we're definitely more aware of good customer service than we used to be, and that, again, that's good for the consumer. But we've taken the level of art up. Because you've got to set yourself apart. So there's only a few ways you can do that. You can offer better quality art or a better experience.
Yeah.
And you've got shops that they can't do either of those, so they just go cheap. And tons of artists, I see them undervaluing their stuff all the time. And it's like, man, you're worth more than that, like the tattoo's worth more than that. Your time's worth more than that. there's a lot of tattooers now, but tattooing is still very special, and there's not a lot of good tattooers. We have a very specific skill set that not everybody possesses. You know,
Yeah.
we're worth more. I tell my guys a lot of times, man, whatever price pops into your head, you've probably already discounted it once. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So just whatever price you're fixing to say, add $20 to it. And if the
Yep.
customer balks, then you can just be like, all right, man, if you're going to do it right now, I can knock a couple bucks off. You know?
I think that one of the things that are lacking in training of tattooers is good sales skills.
Yeah.
Good customer service and sales skills.
Mhm.
Everybody focuses on the art and the technical skills and all this. And I mean, that's good for sure. I mean, it's definitely important. It's stuff that needs to be addressed. But if you can't sell tattoos and provide a good customer experience, it doesn't matter how good your tattoos are. So,
Yeah.
you know, your sales skills need to be as good as your technical skills. And that's something it's just too often overlooked. And that's unfortunate. I think a lot of people could learn a lot about sales and customer service, and it would make them better tattooers because they would tattoo more and they
Sure.
would have more clients, and their lives would be easier.
Yeah. If they were providing good customer service, it'd be easier to justify that $100 minimum.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah. I mean, and that's shit. That's a whole another episode right there. That's a huge thing. We've said that before, that it's all about the experience. I found something online when I was doing some research about minimums that was pretty crazy. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase. I'm going to read a little bit, but they're stating there seems to be hidden fees and taxes on everything these days: late fees, activation fees on phones, termination fees, you name it. It's all a way to get extra money in the name of doing business. But what about when you get a tattoo or a piercing? Since body art services are not taxable in the usual sense, we all pay taxes. I mean, it's just, there's no sales.
Well, I think he's talking about services not being taxed like goods are in some places. There's probably some states that are tax crazy, like California, that tax services too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So you think you're in the clear when you get to tattoo prices. Unfortunately, the vast majority of tattoo shops have what's called a shop minimum fee, which is the least amount they want to even deal with you. A way of saying if you don't spend their designated minimum amount of money, they don't want your business. Not only is this insulting to customers, but suggesting such thing reeks of being a ripoff. The good news is more and more shops, as they open, things are getting to a point where such arrogance will catch up with shops that do that and try and gouge you. It will become less common. Until then, you might want to find a shop that doesn't charge a minimum to do that ear piercing. And then they have a link for a do-it-your-home piercing kit.
Nice.
Yeah. So
where did that come from?
I didn't say.
Clearly it wasn't from a tattooer.
Oh, it was on a fucking tattoo shop's website.
Oh, really?
Yes.
And they put a link to a ear piercing kit at home.
A body piercing kit at home.
Wow.
So obviously they don't do piercing or think much of it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But I was pretty blown away that they suggested that the minimum and people that quote minimums was a form of price gouging and arrogance. I guarantee you the clowns that wrote that, they've got a minimum. There's certain things that they're not going to do for $5. You know what I mean? They're just not telling people what that magic number is. I was pretty blown away. I actually didn't save the name of the shop because I might have said it, and it's probably not cool to call somebody.
Right. No, I understand. You know? Yeah.
So couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say to that. I mean, I guess they have the right to didn't think that or whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
So
that's not an argument though. They're just insulting everybody. They're not saying, hey, like you're not doing this the right way. And here's why. They're just like, oh, these people are arrogant, greedy price gougers. That's not an argument. It's just
so
nonsense.
like I said, the three ways that you can set yourselves apart: customer service, art, and pricing. They've chose pricing because, to me, I read that, I'm thinking these guys are probably cheap. I don't that might not be true, and that might be their tactic, but is that tactic any less or more dishonest than just being upfront and being like, I have $100 minimum?
Right.
You know, I don't like quoting minimums, but I mean, let's be honest about it here. I was blown away, you know.
Yeah, well, that's understandable. The people that wrote that, if they're in the tattoo business, I would be suspect of their ethics. You know?
Yeah.
That they just seem skeezy to me.
Yeah. If you don't want to spend their minimum amount of money, they don't want your business. And that makes it seem really bad, but I'm sorry, I'm not going to give stuff away. Time and stuff is valuable. Everybody's time is valuable. The customers, mine, yours.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. If you're trying to get a name for $5, I probably don't want your business. There's a guy down the street that does, though.
Yeah. Again, I'm glad that guy down the street's tattooing for cheap because he's taking the customers we don't want to deal with.
Yeah. And every once in a while, one of my guys will get mad. They'll be like, oh man, somebody should do something about that guy. I'm like, no, dude, that guy's helping you. Trust me, you know?
Yeah.
He doesn't talk shit. Actually, the only thing I've ever heard him say about us and this is through a customer, it's probably true.
Sure.
Is the customer asked, why do they charge so much? And the dude goes, oh, they think they're better than us.
Well, that's legit.
Yeah, it's true. I do think
I mean, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I don't think that minimums are necessarily a bad thing. I just think it's something that isn't really thought about objectively enough.
Mm-hmm.
People just say, oh, well, you know, the problems are people don't know why they have a minimum. I mean, there's different reasons for it. And we've heard a couple of different thoughts behind it. And they make sense, but that's not really necessarily the reality of minimums. I think I also have heard of tattoo shops in an area like kind of saying, hey, let's all do the same minimum. Sort of like cartel type behavior to keep outsiders from getting into the market or whatever. Which I'm not for that. I think, you know, if you have to tell other people like, hey, let's all have the same minimum, like, well, we're not doing the same thing. We're not providing the same experience.
Yeah.
I don't expect other shops to have the same minimum as us, let's say. I don't care what other shops are doing. It doesn't matter to me. That those probably aren't my customers that are going there, you know. Maybe they are.
Yeah. Who knows, you know? And you know, if you're in a small town and there's only a few shops, you might be able to get away with that. But in a big city, you know, where there's easily over 100 shops in town, you're never ever going to get away with that. And you know, the shops that are charging, there's shops in town that have a $50 minimum. They know exactly what they're doing.
Sure.
They know that the rest of us are at 100 or 120 even or more.
Yeah.
They know that, but they've made the decision to be at 50. And, you know, maybe that's their tactic for getting customers in the door, or maybe they just think that we're all ridiculous, or maybe their rent's really cheap. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think there was a sign. I don't know if I saw it with my own eyes or if it was in a book, like I saw a photo of it, but it said something like, yeah, we don't care about the price the guy down the street gave you. He knows what his work is worth. I don't know if you've ever seen that before, but I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it is pretty good. This made me think of something else. We talk about minimums and stuff like that. And remember when there was only a couple conventions a year, you would go to a convention, and at a convention you charged more. What I mean? It was more expensive to get tattooed at a convention because you're trying to recoup travel costs and all of that. You would have 50 booths, and you probably walked around trying to get a name, you'd probably get 50 different prices,
Yeah.
But we were all charging more. And then somewhere, the dynamic shifted to where the customers expected a convention to be cheaper, and artists started accommodating them for that. The last convention I did, I think, was in Denver, and there were dudes doing $20 names.
No way.
Yes, this was pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
The pandemic drove prices for everything up. But yeah, I could not believe it.
I can't believe that the organizers of the event tolerated that. I mean, most of the conventions you go to nowadays, they tell you, hey, there's $100 minimum here, period.
I haven't heard that, but I haven't done a convention.
Oh, I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of them say that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy. I was just like, I'm not fucking with that,
I say that most of the good ones, the ones, that we would go to, there's probably shitty conventions that are just like, yeah, do whatever you want. I don't care. I got my, $700 for your booth. Dude, you could tattoo for free for all I care.
Yeah.
I guess there are a lot of misconceptions about the minimum charge for tattoo shops. Those misconceptions are among tattooers, shop owners, and customers. That there are obviously certain problems that are associated with telling people a minimum charge without discussing aspects of the design and things like that. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that what we do has value, and we don't need to, I don't know, shortchange ourselves or
Sure.
not, get a just remuneration for the services that we're providing for people.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate that some problem customers can kind of make us a little gun shy about quoting prices. I personally feel that's the biggest issue. Like, you start out as a new tattooer and you're not really confident in all aspects of your abilities, including your ability to maybe price a tattoo. And then you have a couple of problem customers over the years that taint you, and you get a little apprehensive to share a price for fear that a customer's going to reject it, or it's going to result in a loss of the sale or whatever. And it becomes this kind of cycle that it's unfortunate.
Yeah. And how you tell people the price goes a long way too. You've got to, you've got to be confident, not cocky, not arrogant, but you need to have a level of confidence, and you need to, you need to show that you respect the customer, and that could just be, and how you treat them and everything like that. That's a big thing. Nobody wants to go into business and get treated poorly.
No.
My wife, who is not a tattooer, but is the daughter of a tattooer, she was never really around it much, but she knows some things. She would quote prices for me at conventions, or if we were traveling and somebody to her about getting a tattoo. And it was always more than I would have charged, and always, and
Yeah.
and they would always spend it. The people were totally fine with it. You know what I mean? And I'm like, Jesus Christ, you need to come to work with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can remember actually when I first moved, it was me and Ramon. He had just moved too, and we were quoting prices that were a little higher than what you were quoting. And you're like, God damn, I'm going to have you guys quote prices for me. And we all got on the same page, and it was a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? Like you could probably get more than you think you can get. That means you're already undervaluing yourself. You know?
Right. I think a lot of times people get kind of stuck. You know, they're in one place working in the same shop with the same crew for a while, and they just, you know, you gotta shake things up sometimes.
Yeah.
And putting somebody else in there that prices things differently, or you know, just does something differently, stirs things up enough to where you're like, oh yeah, that's how you do this. Okay, yeah, you need to. That's a good thing about going to conventions sometimes too, because you might go to some place where tattoos, just the market price is higher, and you have to raise your prices because, you know, you can do it and the customers expect it and stuff.
Yeah. Associating with and talking to other tattooers, especially other tattooers in your area, is important. You know, the days where everybody and all the tattooers in one town hated each other, that's detrimental to business now, and it's not good for the customer either. If you won't have anything to do with the guy down the street, you might not realize that everybody else in town is charging more than you. You've become the cheap shop in town, you know?
Right.
It used to, I've walked into tattoo shops. This was back in the 90s and some recently, and they instantly know I'm a tattooer, you know?
Oh yeah.
And
we can smell our own.
Yeah. What are you doing? Why are you here? What's going on? What's up? Like, I'm there to steal some fucking magic secret they have that I'm not privy to. It's like, relax, dude. I love tattooing. Tattoos are cool. Tattoo shops are cool. I was just wanting to check yours out. You know what I mean? And yeah, maybe get tattooed, but
yeah,
it's not like that as much anymore. But talking to each other about stuff like this is a good thing, and the internet has made that easy. I know that you're in some groups and you talk to other tattooers from other places. And there's all kinds of podcasts, you know, now that are where they're sharing knowledge and information, and hearing other people's perspective about things is great, you know, and maybe can help you not undervalue yourself.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a problem necessarily that needs to be fixed with minimums. I think that it just needs to be thought about in a way that's kind of realistic and practical. You know, there's definitely some misconceptions about it. And that's unfortunate. But I think, you know, I don't think that minimums are going to go away like the one little blurb that you read, say no to shop minimums or whatever it was. I don't think that's a thing. But I do think that talking to customers about a minimum price before you talk about the tattoo that they're going to get is not probably the best business that you can do. You know?
I tattooed Morse code for the letter D on somebody today. So the tattoo was literally 2 dots and a dash.
Yep.
And I just could not, in good conscience, charge that person the shop minimum for that tattoo. It was,
what did you charge them, if you don't mind me asking?
I charged less. I charged $80.
Okay.
So it was less than the minimum. And I mean, yes, I used all the same amount of supplies and equipment and time and everything as if I had done a name on somebody that I would have charged $120 for.
Yeah.
But the tattoo, bottom line, was just not worth that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And I say I charged $80. It was a couple's thing the other customer got something else. I just gave them a price for both of them. I'm like, just give me this.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, the minimum isn't always going to apply. Like you said, you know what I mean? You tattoo your friends for less. And then,
Sure.
you know, shops do stuff like Friday the 13th, where they'll do tattoos for 13 or 31 or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of people shit on that, but dude, that's fun. I love fucking tattooing. I learned to tattoo a shop where it was military. So it was crazy payday weekend. And doing $13 tattoos in one day kind of takes me back to that. And it's fun. You know what I mean? It's fun. I wouldn't do it every fucking day or even once a year. But once a year is cool, man. You know?
Yeah, no, I like it too. I think it's a nice little thing you can do to give back to your customers. Hopefully the people that you're getting are people that you've already tattooed before in the shop, you know, maybe not you personally, but maybe one of the other guys has.
Sure.
And giving them a little souvenir tattoo for, you know, a cheap price is a fun little reward for them. And, you know, like you said, we do this because we love it. We love tattooing, and tattooing for $13 to do a little fun banger that you're into, and giving a reward to your customer is a nice little part of it, I think.
Yeah. You know, especially if you go into it, like I'm not thinking, oh, I'm going to go to work and make money today. It's like, actually, I'm off on Fridays. I go in on my day off to do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, it's fun. But obviously that means I don't really have $100 minimum, I guess, do I? If I do that.
No, you do not. Yeah. I mean, you just said you tattooed somebody for $80.
Yeah. I
mean, really, your minimum is zero, man. I'm sure you've tattooed your homeboy for nothing.
Yeah. Not usually.
If a customer asks you what your minimum is and you say zero, they'll go, what? And you go, yeah, but I get to pick the tattoo.
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
You probably won't like it.
Not a tattoo on your dick, a tattoo of a dick. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
Now the minimum thing has also been turned into something to like where somebody that has a little bit of experience with tattoos, a more seasoned customer, if they're calling around and you know, they're looking, seeing what the minimum is, you know, say you're in a new town or whatever, you think about getting tattooed.
Sure.
And everybody's telling you 120 and you get somebody that tells you $40, you're going to stay away from that fucking place. You know, it's like, whoa, you know, why are you so cheap when everybody's so expensive? And there could be a legitimate reason for that. Maybe it's just somebody that's like, you know, overhead's low. I just love doing tattoos on people, you know.
Or maybe it's a guy like the guy that you were next to at the convention, and he only does a certain kind of tattoo, and you know, he's got it figured out that, you know, he's got these, you know, 120 designs that he does for $40 each, and he can make a living at doing that. And I mean, I guess that's okay, you know, but that's all you can get from him, you know, it's limited.
Yeah.
I just made that up. I don't know if that's a thing. You know, I've heard of shops doing like $40 name day on Tuesdays once a month or something. I think there was some shop in Chicago that was doing that. And of course, everybody shit all over them and stuff, but they had a fucking line out the door, and guys were doing single pass script names all day, and they probably made a fucking pile of money from it too.
Sure. And probably generated a bunch of repeat business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was telling another tattooer my story about the convention and the guy doing stuff for traditional tattoos at traditional prices. And they went, dude, that's a great idea. Let's take a bunch of Sailor Jerry flash and come up with, we'll make 3 books. We'll do pork chop sheets, and like everything in one book will be this much, and everything in this book will be this much, and everything in this book will be this much, you know, like 50, 60, 70 or something like that. We'll get to do a bunch of cool tattoos. And I thought it was a rad idea, and then we never did it.
I think that's a good idea, but I think that is something that could be used to help teach people to tattoo. So if you had somebody that's an apprentice or like just starting to tattoo, like early on, you could have a you know, a 60, 80, $100 sheet, book, whatever, and just have them do those designs until they were like completely technically proficient at tattooing. And
Yeah.
then, okay, you've mastered this aspect of tattooing. Let's move on to the next thing.
Well,
You know?
I mean, in a way, we kind of
Sort of like a barber college for tattoos, you know?
yeah. Anytime I have an apprentice that's that's ready to start doing their free tattoos, they always like draw up a sheet of designs that they're going to try
Yeah.
and be like, hey, any of these
Yeah.
are free, and you know, and I approve or don't approve whatever is on the sheet, you know.
No,
and
I agree.
you know, so I guess we kind of do that in a way, and you know, the customers are going to show you some little simple thing, you know, on Pinterest anyway. So
Yeah.
but cool. I think that's about all I got for minimums.
Yeah. As far as I can tell, we've covered everything that
Yeah.
we need to cover. There's probably a lot of opinions about this, and I'd be real eager to hear what people have to say. I know that it's a passionate subject for some people, and
Oh yeah, I definitely think that if we get this out there and get some feedback, we should do a follow up to address some of this. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of feedback and you know, people hating on us.
Oh yeah. Some people are going to think that we're geniuses, and some people are going to think that we're idiots, and they might both be right.
An idiot savant.
That's it for this episode of I Love